I'm Randy Strom, an audit partner at Marshall Jones. In partnership with the Georgia Center for Nonprofits, I'd like to welcome Sherry Martin, the President and CEO of the Cobb Community Foundation. Sherry and I got to work together on the board of directors of the Cobb Community Foundation. I actually got to serve 7 years, and with Sherry's investment background, she actually transitioned from a board member to be our leadership. And she's done such an outstanding job. I asked her today to help us walk through donor advised funds. We see her in the media so much, and there's definitely a lot of benefits there. And we just have a few questions that I know she can help us out with. Number one would be, can you just walk us through the definition of a donor advised fund? Number two, describe how it works, and we've heard this notion of give, grow, and grant. Just walk us through that.
Okay.
And then third, just walk us through one of the many benefits that a donor would have by setting up a donor advised fund with a community foundation.
Happy to do it. Thanks, Randy, and I appreciate being here today. So a donor advised fund is like a charitable savings or investment account. But instead of having it at a bank or an investment firm, it's actually held by a charity. And there are specific types of charities that can hold donor advised funds. The first ones that ever held donor advised funds are community foundations like Cobb Community Foundation. Then you've got national charities, certain national charities like National Philanthropic Trust, for example, or National Christian Foundation. And then you also have the commercial donor advised fund providers, and that's Fidelity Charitable, Schwab, TD Ameritrade, a lot of the larger investment management firms. So in a nutshell, it's your charitable savings or investment account. And the way it works is just as you would make a deposit to an account, you actually make a contribution to a fund. And because all of those entities that we talked about that would hold a fund are charities, when you make that contribution, you're making a charitable contribution. Like any charitable contribution, you can't take it back. And like any charitable contribution, you generally get a tax deduction for the fair market value. But unlike many charitable contributions, you're not making this just to Cobb Community Foundation, for example, to do whatever you want to do what we want to do with it. You're putting it into a donor advised fund with Cobb Community Foundation, which means that you're going to advise us on how you want this to work. Specifically, you're going to advise us on the charities that you want to receive distributions or grants from your donor advised fund. And in the meantime, those dollars that you've contributed are going to be invested and are going to grow. So we talk about give, grow, grant. You give to your donor advised fund. You let it grow until you're ready for it to grant, to make your own grants from your donor advised fund to the charities that you have selected.
That's it.
And then you also asked about benefits.
Yes.
So I think the greatest benefit to donor advised funds, and this is why they are the single largest charitable vehicle in the country, is that with the donor advised fund, it's convenient. You make your contribution when it makes the most sense for you from any perspective. But then you grant and decide where the dollars are going to go when you're ready. So there's no pressure to make sure that just because this was a great tax year for you, no, nix that. Just because this was a great income year for you, which means you're probably going to have a higher tax bill. That doesn't mean you've got to decide where all the amount that you want to give to charity is going to go right then. So I'm a perfect example of this. In my previous world, I was in wealth management. And I was very fortunate to work for a company where I had the opportunity to buy stock in the company. And when I left to come be with Cobb Community Foundation, that stock fortunately had appreciated and I had to sell it back. Well, I'd always had in my mind that when I sold my stock, a certain portion of it was going to go to charity. But if at that time I had to take that amount, which wasn't huge, but for me, it was a lot. If I had to give it all away right then, I never would have done it. But instead, I put that amount in a donor advised fund at Cobb Community Foundation. So I gave, it has grown, and now I grant. It's been easy. It has allowed me to be purposeful and strategic, which means I'm going to make a bigger impact. And while this wasn't part of my original thought, for many of our fund holders, they use their fund to help build their legacy. They involve their family, their children, their grandchildren, in making decisions as to where the dollars are going to go. And so, and if there are still dollars left in your donor advised fund, when you leave this earth, that donor advised fund continues on, and your children and grandchildren continue to make grants. So the benefits are just numerous, but it's a great tool, and I appreciate your letting me talk about it.
Thank you, that's perfect.